Welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to talk about key phrases about house. If you master these phrases, you will become a fluent English speaker. These phrases gonna make you fluent. You need to develop a separate notebook. I will share in a separate video. The link will be given in the description where I will be discussing how to make a vocabulary notebook in order to be fluent in your English speaking journey. First, we gotta know this thing that a house is a building where you live. This is the basic definition of a house. So we pronounce this word as house. But when you convert it into a plural form to represent more than one houses, you're gonna pronounce this as houses with a Z sound. You will pronounce this word with a Z sound. It won't be houses. It will be houses. So this is a common mistake that you must understand. So let's begin with the phrases. The first phrase is to live in a house. Means when you live in a particular house. So the example sentences are, we've lived in the same house for over 30 years. It's been 30 years since we've been living in that particular house. Second example is, she lives in the little house in or on cross street. Both are correct. In the street or on the street. Both are correct. Next phrase is occupy a house. When you live in a house, you occupy the house. Example sentence is, we occupied the same house for 20 years. We didn't change our house for 20 years. Next phrase is to buy a house. When you pay money and you own a house, you buy a house. Example sentence is, I don't want to buy a luxurious house. It would cost a lot of money. I don't want to buy a luxurious house. It would cost a lot of money. Next phrase is to sell a house. When you sell a house, you take the money and you give a house in the ownership of someone else. Example sentence is, you can't sell your house because you are asking for a lot of money. You can't sell your house because you're asking for a lot of money. Nobody's gonna pay that much money to you, so you can't sell your house. Next phrase is move a house. When you move a house, you stop living in this house that you're living at the moment and you start living in a new place. You move a house. Moving a house can be very stressful for some people. Moving a house can be very stressful for some people. Next phrase is share a house. It means to live together in the same house with somebody. It means there are other people who are living in the same house with you. Example is, my son shares a house with 5 other students. My son shares a house with 5 other students. There are other 5 students who live with my son. Next phrase is build a house. To make a house, to construct a house. Somebody's building a house here, somebody's building a house here. Example sentence is, you need a lot of money to build your dream house. You need a lot of money to build your dream house. Leave the house. It is when you go to work in the morning generally. So you call it leave the house. Example sentence is, what time do you leave the house in the morning? What time do you leave the house in the morning? Move into a house. Move into a house. To start living in a new house. You start living in a new place or new building or new house. The Smiths want to move into a big house. The current house is very small for them, might be. The Smiths want to move into a big house. Move out of a house. Move out of a house. To leave the house where you're living now in order to go and live somewhere else. To stay away from your house that you're living in. Temporarily, might be. When I was a student, I moved out of my house to live in a hostel. When I was a student, I moved out of my house to live in a hostel. To rent out a house or to let out a house. It means to allow other people to live in your house and they would pay money to you every month or every week. You rent out a house in this way. We rented out our house to the university students. We rented out our house to the university students. We let out our house when we moved to America. We let out our house when we moved to America. To rent a house. You live in a house that you don't own and you pay money every week or every month to the owner of the house. You call it to rent a house. They decided to rent a house in the suburbs. They decided to rent a house in the suburbs. Suburbs means an area that is connected to the city but is not a part of the city. It is the adjacent area near the city. Suburbs. Break into a house. When you break into somebody's house, you use some force to get into the house in order to steal something or do something bad. Like this guy, somebody is trying to break into somebody's house, right? So you or she is using kind of tools to get into the house. So the sentence is, police caught the thief trying to break into the house. Police caught the thief trying to break into the house. Next phrase is, stay at somebody's house. Stay at somebody's house. You might go to a city where your relatives live and you might have an urgent piece of work there. You don't want to rent a house, so you might live there in their house for a night or for a short period of time. So you call it to stay at somebody's house. If you can't find a room in a hotel, you're welcome to stay at our house. If you can't find a room in a hotel, you're welcome to stay at our house. Pass somebody's house. This is somebody's house and you're moving along this house. You're passing near from this house. So you move by this house. So this is what you call pass somebody's house. Example sentence is, if you're ever passing our house, why don't you drop in for a cup of tea? If you're ever passing our house, why don't you drop in for a cup of tea? It means that whenever you're passing our house, please come to our house, visit our house so that we can have a cup of tea together. Next is renovate a house. Renovate a house might mean that it is in bad condition and you do some repairing work to make it good again, to make it in good condition again. We like buying really old houses, we renovate them and later sell them. We like buying really old houses, we renovate them and later sell them. Might be our business. Next phrase is decorate a house or do up a house. This phrase is the informal version of this. Formally, when you talk to people officially, you use this word, decorate a house, but in conversation with your friends, you might use this phrase, do up a house. They both mean the same. To put something, to paint or wallpaper on the inside walls of a house, to do some decoration inside your house. See, like this or this. A decorated house looks good. The couple are busy decorating their new house. The couple are busy decorating their new house. Next phrase is demolish a house, knock down a house, or tear down a house. When you destroy intentionally a building, you call it demolish a building or demolish a house. A number of houses were demolished so that the supermarket could be built. A number of houses were demolished so that the supermarket could be built. A house is standing or a house is not standing. It may be existing or it may not be existing at this particular time. The house I was born in is no longer standing. It was demolished 10 years ago. The house I was born in is no longer standing. It was demolished 10 years ago. Somebody demolished it 10 years ago. It's not existing now. A house overlooks something, might be river or garden. This is the house and this is the river. You can see river from here or from here. So this is termed as overlooks. Your house overlooks the river. The example sentence says they built their dream house overlooking the river. They built their own dream house overlooking the river. Lock yourself out of the house. Lock yourself out of the house. It is when you forgot the keys, might be inside the house or somewhere else, and you don't have the keys with you right now. You cannot get in. So you call it, you locked yourself out of the house. Example sentence says, I locked myself out of the house and had to climb in the bedroom window. I locked myself out of the house and had to climb in the bedroom window. I didn't have the keys, so I had to climb the window in order to get in, as this lady is doing. She doesn't have the keys. She is trying to fight with the doors. The whole or entire house. The whole or entire house refers all the people living in a house. All the people living in a house. Try not to wake the whole house when you come in. Try not to wake the whole house when you come in. Means don't make any noise. Otherwise, everybody's gonna wake up. You will wake up the entire house with that noise. You will wake up the entire house with that noise. Don't make this noise. Otherwise, everybody will wake up. House to house. Go into every house. or from one house to the other in a particular area or road. Example sentences are: she went from house to the house collecting signatures for her campaign. She went from house to house collecting signatures for her campaign. Police are conducting a house-to-house search for the criminal. Police are conducting a house-to-house search for the criminal. Next phrase is single story or single-storied or two-story house. Single story, in British English you write story in this way. This is British English. In American English you write story like this, right? This is American English. Both the spellings are correct, but you're advised to use any spelling system throughout your life. Be stick with British English or be stick with American English. You gotta choose only one spelling system throughout your life, so that you will never be confused in your life. A single story building is like this building. This house is a single story house. It doesn't have any portion or floor above. This house is a double story building. You can live in here, you can live here. There are two portions for living, right? So you call it a double story or two-story house. Example sentence is: she has moved to a single story house. She has moved to a single story house like this. Next phrase is terraced houses or row houses. When the houses are connected from one another. For example, this is your house 1, this is your house 2, this is your house 3, this is your house 4. And all the houses are like this, as you can see in this picture as well. Every house is connected on the both sides from the other house. So you call these types of houses terraced houses or row houses. Example sentence is: they lived with their 4 children in an old row house. They lived with their 4 children in an old row house. A semi-detached house. It is a house that is attached to another house on only one side. For example, these are 2 houses. This is house 1 and this is house 2. See, this house is connected with the other house. H1 is connected with H2 from one side only, here. It is isolated from this side. This H1 is isolated here. It is free here. So these types of houses you call semi-detached houses. So is the case here. These are 2 houses. They are connected. They share only one wall, right? This house is free here. This house is free here. So these types of houses we call them a semi-detached house. It was a semi-detached house with a very small garden. It was a semi-detached house with a very small garden. Next phrase is a detached house. A house that is not joined to any other house. Right? A house that is isolated. You call this a detached house. Forrest lives in a large detached house. Forrest lives in a large detached house. A country house. A very large house in the countryside. It is a house in the village side or town side where land is not very expensive and where there are a lot of trees. Countryside, we call that side countryside. So as you can see here, this is a very, very big house. We can't see any other houses in the surrounding, and there is a lot of greenery or trees. Example sentence is: after the war, many big country houses had to be sold because the owners could not afford to maintain them. After the war, many big country houses had to be sold because the owners could not afford to maintain them. Next phrase is little, small, or tiny house. Little, small, or tiny house. You can use any of these words to refer to any small house out there. Example sentence would be: they lived in a modest semi-detached house in the suburbs. They lived in a modest semi-detached house in the suburbs. You can also use these words with house. You can say a beautiful house, a nice house, or a lovely house when a house is very much attractive or beautiful. You can also say a comfortable house when it is very comfortable. You can say a delightful house when it makes you happy or delighted. You can also say an elegant house, a grand house, or enormous or gigantic or huge house, to give the idea of very big house. Then there are some other expensive houses. You call them a luxurious house or posh house or splendid house, a magnificent house or expensive house, right? Then we have not very expensive house. You call it a modest house. A spacious house which has lots of rooms or a lot of space for a lot of things, or might be for people or for things. You call this house a spacious house. A dream house. A rented house. A rented house is a house that you don't own. You pay money to the owner every week or every month. A tidy or untidy house. Tidy is a clean house, a house that is nice, neat and clean. A house that is not clean, we call it untidy house. A house can be empty, a house can be unoccupied, a house can be a vacant house when nobody's living in that particular house. A house can be a country house, a suburban house, a town house. All these houses refer to those houses which are not in the city, because in city land is very much expensive. So these are maybe not very expensive houses, right? Most of the time. So this is the end of today's video. I hope you've learned a lot of phrases about house. I want you to note these phrases down into your vocabulary notebook and practice your fluency with these fluent phrases. These phrases are meant to make you fluent. If you like the video, subscribe and share it with other fellows. Thank you.